On today's, man, we're going to do part 2 of the one I did on the setup. And what we're going to be discussing is the validation process, how I became validated as a Northern Structure member. So as I discussed in my last episode, I was in the hole for numerous incidents. Got sent to a prison that was all basura. It was all bad for the Northerners there. A lot of young active cats were being sent there at that time. So I caught a couple assaults in there, a couple DA referrals. They all ended up getting rejected. And over time, when I went to ICC, they ended up doing an IGI review because they noticed something in my C file. And so what came to terms with this is that they ended up finding 6 things to validate me as, okay? CDC procedures are this. They need 3 identifying things to validate you. It could be self-admittance. It could be pictures with gang members. It could be paperwork, like written notes, written stuff. It could be tattoos. And it could be association. They use all these things, and what they do is they create a validation packet. Once they have this validation packet, they validate you at the Institute by the IGI, or what you would call at that time, I think it was the ISU, which would be Investigative Service Unit, which is the top tier. That's the brass to the IGIs. They have their own squad, their own procedures, their own lieutenants, their own captains, and so forth. And so the things that they got me for to validate me, okay, 1, my cellie when I was in the county jail as an 18-year-old kid was a validated Northern Structure member. He had an E number. I had his PFN to the county jail. They ran that PFN number, compared it with the CDC number, and used that to validate me. 2, the second thing, they used a letter, right, that was written in some basic codes and was sent to Corcoran SHU, to someone over there. And it talked about, you know, set procedures and so forth, and forward leadership and so forth, little code things. And they somehow they were able to identify where this letter they thought was going out. So they basically took my mail, screened it, they Xeroxed it, and then they highlighted everything they considered was gang related. But there was nothing really, there was just basic communications between me and a friend. So when you used to, back in the days, we used to write a lot of letters in riddle. And so they would try to decipher those codes sometimes. And that was the easy way to communicate with people, to kind of get a message. I mean, there's other codes later on, you know, an established code, ghostwriting, broken vowel, so forth. The safest code to use would be a code that you establish with you and another person, that only you two know that code, because that can't be broken. I could use a word like, you know what I mean? The candle's lit. That could mean he's on freeze. I could use that, man, I was watching Seinfeld. That could mean he's all good. That's a code that only you and that person know. The third thing that they used, the third and fourth thing, they had 1030s. Okay, this was what was interesting. I had been away from the last institution for 2 months, but they had 2 different debriefing reports that were 2 months old from when I last left that institution. So I have to really consider that it probably was Tito from Stockton that was telling. And he was the OA at the yard. He was no good. And as soon as he got moved on, he started to debrief. So that's what I believe, because they never tell you who the person is on the 1030. It's a confidential thing. It's green. It's put in your file, and it lists what information they have about you. And CDC used to do a lot of corrupt stuff, man. They used to use confidential informants to write 115s on you, get you to the hole, get you under investigation. And there's no way for you to challenge or contest the information they have against you. So they had 2 of those. That's 4. The 5th thing that they had is that they had some written stuff that came out of a book called The Concept of Leaderships. Okay? They had 2 different things of those. So that was 5 and 6. And all that stuff that I had was written stuff that was actually came out of a book that came from Pelican Bay, that a carnal named Sniper from Broderick, when he came through Solano, left the collector to us. He left a couple filters and a couple educational things for people to learn. It was nothing that was out of the ordinary. It came in different fragments, but they used that to validate me. There was nothing that talked about gangs or anything. Okay, in the process of this, before they gathered this, they would pull me out, and they would say that they were taking me to the law library, and next thing you know, I'd be in the IGI office to take pictures and so forth. And they used to always try to randomly just hit my cell and gather as much intelligence as they could. And the bad thing about it is that they didn't have anything that was really valid information. I tried to contest all of it. You know, first and foremost, the association PFN number, I'm like, you guys put me in the cell with him in the county jail. How do I know he's a Northern Structure member? You guys forced that association upon me. They didn't want to hear it. I go, you're 1030. How can I sit there and dispute a 1030 if I don't know what they're saying about me? You tell me that they've identified me as a Northern Structure member. Therefore, you find this information to be valid. Those are two things. You get what I'm saying? The letter, even in the letter, right? There was nothing that was in that letter that could be used as gang related. Now, later on, after I got validated, I wrote a letter to another hermano, DK. If you're watching DK, I sent mine, man. He got his validation packet. One of the things that they used against him was a letter from me. And this is how good they were. They Xeroxed the letter at that institution I was at, and then where he was at, you know what I'm saying? They were able to locate where this letter went. They were able to look at our conversations, even though I was rerouting them different ways to get to them. And they used that to validate them. And my code in that was pretty simple, was, let the landlord up there in the bay know that I'm coming. That old girl Vicky got to me, man, I can't stand that bitch. I'm basically telling them I just got validated. I'm on my way up to the bay, and let people know that I'm coming up there. Because at that time, I had heard that DK was going under the validation process, but what ended up happening is they had him under investigation for the validation process, but he beat it and went to a whole nother institution. So as soon as they got that letter, that was one of the criteria that they used against him to validate him. Okay. Now, the other things, the concept of leadership stuff that I had, that was nothing. You know what I'm saying? And it's just unfortunate. This is how they used to lock us up in the shoe. You don't know how many Northerners I met that just did their thing, did their time, and because someone dropped a 1030 on them, because they had a tattoo like a weather bird or whatnot, they started slamming people down. You know what I'm saying? When I was in the shoe, the majority of the gente that were there were either NF and structure members or MA and MA associates, because they were doing the same thing with the Southsiders. They were identifying them as associates of the Mexican Mafia. But with us, they were identifying us as a Northern Structure or Alas NF. And so this was a whole different process, man. And once they get this packet done, right, ISU and IGI, they send it to Sacramento. Once it gets to Sacramento, they stamp it. They go, they review all the packet. They look at all information that they have to substantiate you as a validated member. Then they stamp it that you're validated. You get a notification from Sacramento saying that you've been identified and validated as a prison gang member. And see, the thing is there's no due process. You can file a 602. You can exhaust all state remedies. Whenever you want to contest anything within the Department of Corrections, to get into the federal courts, you have to exhaust all state remedies first. So you can actually use a 602 going through the 3-tier processes to get there to exhaust your state remedies. You don't have to file habeas corpus right away, because sometimes that may get backlogged for a minute. 602s as well, but they're supposed to have a time frame when they're supposed to answer these. And that's the messed up thing about it, is I was filing every motion. I was filing 602s. I was trying to retain my mainline status, which was bond 3 at the time. You know what I mean? Acquire that mainline status, but still you get shut down. And that's the thing that was kind of hard as far as in the system, and why the end of hostilities, I think, is a good thing, because a lot of people didn't get that due process to challenge their validations. You were just validated because they wanted to say you were validated. And people were getting validated for stupid stuff like an XIV, 4 dots, a drawing. Say you draw a picture of some Aztec work. They were validating you with that, man. And so, like I said, the setup for me, man, is they got me to an institution that forced me to act the way I had to act. Everybody knows that this place was all bad for Northerners. Anytime any Norteños tried to establish that yard, they ended up having to get off. Too many oppositions, too many foes. There's no way to clean up that yard. So what you're supposed to do is go there, identify targets, and handle your business. Especially if you go with a group of guys. Because there were certain homeboys that were also going out there that, they're out there 5-6 deep, and they're trying to plan what they're going to do. They're functioning. They started wearing boots and so forth and programming out there. Next thing you know, they're getting rolled up by staff for promoting gang activity. Because you're on the yard, walking in twos, and you're wearing boots. That's how fucked up this joint was. And so I think for the consequences that happened over there in Solano, that they deliberately put me in this institution so it could set me up to be validated. It's a messed up thing for years. I don't think people understand how much corrupt the procedures were, man. How there was no process to contest these charges. you know, and the state would use everything in their power. Like, we can't reveal our confidential sources. And the thing that they used to do with these 1030s is they have provided reliable information in the past. That's how they substantiated that the information was deemed credible. But you have no cross-reference to check that and challenge that in any courts because they won't relinquish it. So therefore, the courts, most of the time, were pretty much not overturning anybody's validations. Now, later on, you know what I'm saying, when I was there, my cellie at the time, Steve-O from Sanho, was one of the first ones to get pulled out for the inactive thing. They started to let people out if you were inactive from activities in the SHU. They were giving people a process. You know what I mean? If you had no write-ups, you had no 1030s, no nothing, we'll put you under inactive review. And that came from filing numerous habeas corpuses with the courts and so forth, man. But, you know, like I said, man, CDC, man, that was one of the worst experiences I ever had. From the Associate Warden Schwartz, not Schwartz, McAllister, to the IGI, man, which was some dude named Schwartz, man. I swear to God, he looked like a Richie Cunningham or something like that, man. And years later, I could never see an IGI that looked like him, man. And he was finding stuff that was not valid, that was not credible, and using it because administration had issues with me. I don't know if McAllister, the Associate Warden, had issues from me that stemmed from the last institute, but I know I created issues there with him when I tried to rush him. In addition, man, it was just it was a faulty situation, you know, as a young kid. You know, I went to prison at a very young age. I got laced up. But getting there, you don't know what to experience or what they're going to throw at you as you're learning to be a convict in the system. You know, I didn't expect to get sent to a place like this. You know, my whole thing was, why the fuck you put me here? That was my thought. You're going to put me on the yard, I'm going to get off. I'm not going to tell you I'm going to get off. And they couldn't understand why I was behaving the way I was behaving. Because I wasn't like these other dudes who just came there. There was nobody there. And they just fell in file and just did whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's how the 90s were, man. If there was no one there to answer to, people were going to do what they wanted to do. So me, you put me out there with someone I know that's basura, we were getting off. We were getting busy. You know, I wasn't going to take nothing from nobody, even staff at that time. So, you know, for the whole message in this, right, is when you put yourself in control of the system, the judicial system, the criminal system, the court system, and so forth, you pretty much are put in a very uncompromising situation to where you do not know if your rights are going to be protected, especially when it's the prison system, the prison pipeline, because CDC's always done what they wanted to do. Now there's a little bit more restrictions on them. They've started to put body cams on them on the lower levels so they can't get away with certain corrupt activities. I think they need to be held accountable with more stuff because the things I've seen from staff and what I experienced, man, especially at that institution, man, was torment and cruel and unusual punishment. And I'm not biased towards police officers. You know what I mean? You guys should know that, man. I'll talk to certain, you know, XCOs or cops and be cool. You know what I mean? We've had them on the show. But I'm going to keep it 100. The torments and abuses that were experienced in prison, no one deserves to be treated like that. Point blank. I'm just trying to do my time. I didn't ask to be at this institution. I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do. As far as if you tell me I got to go to this yard, okay, I'm going to go to that yard. If I decide to handle my business, that's on me. You shouldn't put me out there. But I'm not going to tell you to. And they couldn't figure it out. I didn't tell them that, but that's what I'm thinking. You know, because I had that soldado mentality. Put me on the yard with anybody. We're going to get busy. And that's just how it was. You know what I mean? Because that's how I was taught. That's how, you know what I mean? I was educated, and that was a persona that I wanted to show people who I was as a man. And with that comes consequences, you know, and it made it unfortunate for people who are just trying to live by a certain code of conduct in prison, the convict code. If you live up to that conduct code as being a convict, there's a lot of times there's repercussions and consequences, man. And so this is the process of validation, man. A lot of people went through this, man. The system, man, needs to be changed. There needs to be an overhaul. You know what I mean? We need to look at criminal reform, different areas, because you're starting to see new things and everybody's starting to question it. Cain Velasquez situation. How do you guys feel about that? That's just straight basura. That dude had everything he had coming, man. He's lucky he didn't get whacked. You know, but they protect certain people and then they destroy others. You know, it's just an unfair system, man. There's no due process. There's no rights. There's a whole, you know, delay in going to courts. They make going to court difficult. They put you in a holding cell for 12 hours. They do everything they can to make you feel uncomfortable, man. And they claim it's for protection and security. Now, that's bullshit. It's for punishment. It's because they want to get you up and out of here. You know, anyways, man, I'm going to let this go. Validation process, that's how I got validated, man. One of the weakest validation packets I've ever heard or seen, man. There was nothing there to substantiate any type of membership. But that's how the game rolls. Anyways, it's your boy Flacco. I'm out.